Heat waves, drought, fires and floods. What were once exceptional global events are now routine reports in our daily news bulletins. Members of the European Economic and Social Committee share their heartfelt stories of survival and loss. Their experiences highlight the emotional and economic toll of these disasters and help us to understand the challenges faced by those on the front lines of climate change across Europe. Here are their powerful testimonies.
Der Keller lief voll, auch im Haus meiner Tochter. Und für uns war das schon furchtbar genug, all dieser Dreck, dieser Gestank, diese monatelange Aufräumarbeit. Aber zumindest wir waren versichert, andere nicht. Zwei Dinge bleiben. Einerseits die Angst. Wenn immer starker Regen angekündigt wird, hoffen wir alle hier in der Region, dass es nicht noch einmal passiert. Und zweitens die Wut. Wut darüber, dass selbst solche Ereignisse in der Politik so gut wie nichts bewirken.
El nivel vegetativo de las viñas y de los árboles es, en algunos casos, irreversible. Así no podemos continuar. O cambia el ciclo climático, o hacemos algo, o vamos a quedarnos absolutamente en una posición desesperada.
This month, in my country, 7 people lost their lives, 5,000 families lost their lifelong possessions, and 40 schools had to suspend their classes, all because of devastating floods.
This August in my county in Ireland we have had 31 days of continuous rain, in which is supposed to be the driest month of our summer, 270 millimetres in total. It makes it impossible to carry out our farming activities. Meteorologists tell us it's because of a shift in the Gulf Stream.
Ανέκαθεν είχαμε φωτιές στην Ελλάδα, φέτος το καλοκαίρι η φωτιά πέρασε στον αστικό ιστό καίγοντας σπίτια μέσα στην Αθήνα. Κάηκαν σπίτια, σχολεία, μονάδες φροντίδας παιδιών, βιοτεχνίες, δυστυχώς και μια εργαζόμενη γυναίκα, εκενώθηκαν νοσοκομεία και ολόκληρες περιοχές.
На 16 юли започна пожара. Всичко е загубено. За моята ферма 800 хектара пасища, 37 хектара и половина градини с дървета, които те току-що започнаха да дават плодове. 28 крави още не са се върнали и още не знам какво още ни предстои. Вода няма, резервоарите са празни. Въпреки невероятните усилия на пожарникарите, те просто не можаха да спрат огъня.
This is what we heard right now. This makes me really angry. Why does it make me angry? Because we are still debating whether we must have more or less climate action and climate activities. The answer is clear. We must have more. And let's use this climate conference, with the leaders of the world to fight for more and for more solidarity in the world, for more solidarity with the people which are affected by climate change, and to call for more investment to onboard all in this journey.
Ladies and gentlemen, is it working? Yeah, it's working now. So that's the same voice which you heard right now without on video. So it's me. It should be exactly the other way around. That's why we are happy to have at first and ask the colleagues coming to the front. We start with Millian Bailey. Then we go to Annabelle Rosenberg. Then we have Rebecca. I don't know whether she's here because we tried to. No, she's not here. Then we have from the World Farming Organization Gunshem Seaborn, and we have Hartwig Rana from the European Commission. Please, Hartwig, come to the stage. So I ask you to be careful with the chairs. Not that we have here in the ILO pavilion the heart of health and safety, not an accident. No? So please be careful.
Shocks. Driving the transition, essential steps. The following are essential steps. Build coalitions and partnerships. Driving change requires collaboration between governments, civil society, farmers, movements, and the private sector. We must unite under a shared vision that prioritizes food sovereignty, where African nations control their own food system. The second one is create evidence-based narratives. We must amplify the success stories of agroecology and other just practices. Policymakers and the public need compelling evidence of their effectiveness in addressing hunger, poverty, and environmental crises. Third, strengthen local and regional markets. Food has produced a report quite recently on that. By fostering local food economies, we reduce dependency on volatile global markets, create jobs, and build resilience. This aligns with the principles of food sovereignty, which AFSA and IPS Food are strongly advocating for. Hold corporations accountable, Large agribusiness must align with sustainability goals, and harmful practices must be phased out. This includes banning harmful pesticides, GMOs, and exploitative land grabbing practices. And the last one is center equity at every level. Women and youth must be at the center of this transition. Women represent the majority of African farmers, yet face systemic barriers to land, credit, and resources. Youth, meanwhile, need opportunities to see farming as a viable and dignified career. Finally, a just transition in the agri-food sector is not merely about avoiding harm, but actively creating a future where the dignity of farmers, the health of ecosystems, and the prosperity of local economies are prioritized. It's about food systems built by the people, for the people. Africa is ready to lead the way, but we must act together boldly and urgently. Let's commit to policies, investments, and actions that recognize the true stewards of our planet, our farmers, and give them the tools and opportunities they need to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milian. We heard right now an overview what IPS Food thinks is about a just transition in the food system, in the agri-food system. So we go now to the other panelists, which we have here at the stage. So I would like to start with Rebecca, if you don't mind. No? So Rebecca, you are a trade unionist from Africa. As someone who has perhaps a different view when we talk about just transition in your point of view. Can you give us a snapshot on what the trade unions, specifically in the global south, think a just transition in the agri-food sector has to be organized? And what are the missing points, especially here at the COP, what we are talking about? Rebecca, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies for coming in late. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Rebecca Okello. I work... okay. Yeah, my name is Rebecca Okello. I work with the Central Organization of Trade Unions in Kenya. It's a national trade union confederation affiliated to 47 affiliates, representing a total of more than 3 million workers. And our affiliates are sector-based representative, and we do have 2 unions that are representing the agricultural sector. That is the Kenya Plantation and Aligned Workers Union and Kenya Sugar Workers Union, based in Kisumu, within Nairobi, Kisumu County. And agriculture is, in Africa generally, it's one of the biggest sector that employs a lot of people, and it contributes more than 60% within, specifically for Kenya, within our country's GDP. And the agricultural system is one that has been greatly affected by the impacts of climate change. Because if I draw closer to the tea plantation sector, we have had to experience a lot of job losses in that sector. Because if I take experience from our affiliates, they have been complaining about the low yield because of the extreme weather that is experienced in Naivasha area in Kenya, where they are growing tea. Because the low degrees of the weather, it results to the tea leaves drying up, and the farmers ending up having low quality of crops. And also now you see employers retentioning more of workers in that sector. And sitting as a climate change coordinator under the Just Transition umbrella, we do have a vision of how just transition should look like, particularly for all workers. And if we draw it down to the agricultural sector, we have key specific elements that we look at. Is the work decent? If the agricultural sector is looking more of the green side on greening and making the production process more sustainable in a manner that it treats better the environment, and we come in as workers representatives in terms of ensuring the workers are well represented in that space. As for COTU, our primary role is to ensure the dignity and welfare of workers is aligned according to the specific jobs they are doing. So for a just transition, the key pillars for agri-food sector will be on matters of decent work and social protection, which is very key for us, because promoting fair wages and safe working condition for farmers in agri sector is something important that needs to be checked when they are checking on issues of just transition, and implementing social protection program to buffer against climate shocks. And speaking from Kenya, most farmers are casual workers in a manner that they are not under the umbrella of the basic social protection systems in Kenya. And one of the biggest role that currently we are implementing is having a social health insurance system that caters for informal workers in areas like the agricultural sector, which is another indicator of having a just transition within those sectors when we are speaking from a labor perspective. Another one is on capacity building and education. Most workers in the agricultural sector are not that inclined on the science understanding on what climate change is affecting them, what are the better produce they need to do within that specific climatic condition. So capacity building and education is really important, particularly equipping youths and farmers with the knowledge on sustainable practices and emerging technologies that are on the ground. Another one is fostering integrational dialogue to blend traditional practices with modern innovation, because we do have traditional practices that our forefathers in Africa understand this is the way we have to do it. So for a just transition, we need to find a way to integrate the traditional knowledge and blend it with the new modern innovation practices. Another one is on the green investments, encouraging sustainable farming practices like agroecology and climate smart agriculture for our farmers, support infrastructural development for renewable energy in the rural areas. Another just transition way as a trade union, our worker representatives, is the inclusion of policies, because most of the time policies are being made without the additional of workers representative on the table. We end up having policies that do not speak to the reality on the ground, and workers are adversely affected. One key example is in the agricultural sector, the tea plantation area. We are still trying to fight for worker space with the introduction of new technology, because currently we have machinery that have been brought in tea plantation farms that are working in spaces where it was occupied by humans. So the machines are doing more work than the people, and we are left with farmers who are not considered into this transition. So this is one of the area where we need policy inclusion that takes in the concerns of farmers, where we should ensure smallholder farmers and rural communities have a voice in the climate negotiation, and also deep policies that bridge the generational divide by involving youth and elders in co-creating solution. And another complaint or another concerns that we have as trade union representative who are representing workers in the agricultural sector, we are not being involved. Even as we sit in this COP, we have not had that integration into the agri sector with the workers, because we speak to the workers and we have a way, we have structures within the trade unions where we have representative in the farm. We call them as shop stewards who ideally understand what are the key issues that are affecting workers. And most of the time we get the disconnect where most negotiators or most representative in this space for farmers do not ideally take key interest on our agendas. Like social protection is very key, and it's a big thing that will promote a lot of difference in this just transition move. I'll leave it from here and pick it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Quite clear. So it means more workers' participation within the processes. That's a quite clear message. Let me move now to Ganjam. Ganjam, you're board member of the World Farmers Association or organization. So how do you manage this scope, being in charge of a World Farmers Organization in the Global South to the Global North? So how you bring this together? Because the transition in these two, let me say, parts of the world are quite different in order to manage it. So I'm quite curious to hear from your side how you manage this, and perhaps you can say something on this point, what Rebecca mentioned, and how you manage the involvement of workers. Ganjam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Gansham Siburan and I am from Mauritius. And for Africa stand a crucial grassroots. Africa stand a crucial grassroots. Our continent home to 60% of the world uncultivated arable land, has immense agricultural potential. Yet we face significant challenges. Over 33 million household farmers who produced up to 80% of the food we eat are on the front line of climate change. Raising temperature, irrigation, rainfalling and diversification threaten the livelihood of our food security. But there is hope. A just transition in the agriculture sectors offer a path to sustainable growth. The transition will not only mitigate climate risk, but also ensure that farmers are their opportunities driven. And at the heart of the transition lies the power of bridging generation, contributing to wisdom of the past with innovation and the future. Role of farmers are not just food producers, they are custodians of land, our land, water and biodiversity. Africa farmers has long adaptation to challenges, using traditional knowledge to manage soil fertility, pursue seeds and ensure resilience. For instance, agroecological practices like intercropping and water harvesting have sustainable committee for generation. However, farmers face mountain pressure. Our average age of the African farmers is 60, yet 60% of Africa population is under 25. Without a deliberate effort to engage the youth who increase living rural areas to reach of better opportunities, agriculture risks stagnation. The next generation, empowering the next generation, Africa youth must see farming not as a bird struggle, but as a variation career. This starts with access to land, affordable financial and technology innovation, such as mobile platform that connect farmers to market, climate smart tool like solar power irrigation system, agrivoltaicism, and precise farming technique can revolutionize agriculture. For example, in Kenya, mobile apps have helped over 500,000 farmers access weather forecast and market price, boosting productivity by 30%. Yet technology alone is not enough. Intergeneration mentorship is key. Elders can teach young farmers traditional practices like soil conservation, while youth bring fresh ideas and tools to modernize production. Together, they can create resilient, sustainable food system here. UNDK or family farming are playing an important role to eliminate this gap. The transformation requires strong leadership. Government must design policies that support smallholder farmers during the transition, subsidize for sustainable practices, access to insurance for climate risk, and invest in rural infrastructure are crucial. For example, countries like Ethiopia has successfully invested in sustainable land management, restoring over 15 million hectares of degraded land and boosting farmers' income. Regional and global partnership are also essential. Under the Africa Continent Free Trade Agreement, we can improve market access for farmers and reduce post-harvesting losses, which currently stand at 4 billion annual. International support can further accelerate this transition through funding and knowledge sharing. Finally, we must prioritize equality. Women who can up to 60 to 80% of Africa agriculture workforce often lack access to resources and land ownership. Supporting women farmers could increase agriculture output by up to 30%, enhance food security for millions. Ladies and gentlemen, the time to act is now. Africa has potential to lead the world in sustainable agriculture, but it's required effective effort. Farmers, young and old, must be empowered to drive the transformation. Government, business, and community must align to create a system that values people, planet, and prosperity. Let us commit to bringing generation honorable and wisdom of the elder while empowering the innovation of our youth. Together we can build a sustainable, just, and thriving agriculture food sectors that only feed Africa but secure a brightened future of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gansem, for your intervention. We will have perhaps later a couple of questions because I have already questions. Annabella Rosenberg, you are working for CAN, for Climate Action Network International. You are quite experienced in all these fields. When I look at your CV, that you have experience in all these fields. The question of just transition we heard from different aspects. Is that sufficient, or are there missing elements in this what we should discuss? Annabella, please.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks so much, for this invitation and for connecting the dots between the just transition conversation and what I would say is agriculture, but it's the bigger conversation about food systems transition, which is what we're talking about. In which agriculture is one part, but we also need to be talking about foods. That's the thing. That's the reason why countries go indebted along with energy. That's one of the, it's at the center of concerns from people around the world. So I think it's really good that we are connecting those two concepts. And yes, many of my partners in the panel brought their interpretations of just transition. Of course, 15 years working in the trade union movement makes me feel very close to what Rebecca was saying. I probably just want to step back for a second and just name the facts. And you said, Peter, agriculture is often seen as a problem, not enough as a solution. I think we should also embrace the fact that food systems as they are today need to change. This is not working. When we are looking at the amount of hunger out there in the world, where we are looking at the amount of food waste out there in the world, where we're looking at emissions, where we are looking at how this system is organized, there are many reasons on top of climate to transform this. And I would add, it remains the deadliest sector for workers as well. The track record on occupational health and safety, exposure to pesticides, and the list goes on. So this sector needs to change. But in the same way, we have some alternatives, and my colleague here talked about agroecology, and that's absolutely something that needs to be supported and needs to be expanded. In the same way, renewable energy is not the only thing that needs to be done to secure a just energy transition. Agroecology is not the only thing that needs to be done to secure a just transition of food systems. And this is what I would like to chip in a little bit more, because we do need to improve working conditions. We need this decent work, to come in. We also need social protection. We know the high levels of informality in this sector, in particular for women, that are, in general, more impacted by lack of coverage of any sort. So all those pieces that are traditional to the just transition framing are key. But we also need to start thinking much more about what economic diversification in countries that are dependent of the industrial, agriculture, as we would like to see changing, are going to be doing of. My country, Argentina, it's a country that is extremely dependent on food exports, and in particular, non-processed food exports. And this is not for Argentinians eating food. We have a severe problem of food insecurity in the country, and at the same time, our macroeconomics are extremely dependent on the foreign currency, that is coming from those commodities. So the economic diversification piece that we have been discussing in the context of the fossil fuel discussion, so how we transition away from fossil fuels, also applies to this conversation. How we transition away of an industrial agriculture that is not delivering for food security in countries. So how do we do it? Well, we need to start thinking what international cooperation looks like in that context. Today, trade rules, investment rules, including bilateral trade agreements, are not serving the purpose of a more sustainable food system. They are actually pushing us in the opposite direction. So I think we also need to be connecting the dots to some of the hard economic realities of this sector. And this is also maybe the addition, or at least the thinking that we're having in the Climate Action Network. We need to be thinking the domestic, the local realities, how we respond to the needs of workers, of women, of young people that are looking at this sector, but they are probably not always that excited to continue in the farming profession because it's an extremely hard one, to be in. No holidays, no break, from sun to, I come from a rural area. I've seen my father and my cousins and everyone, in that sector. Is a really hard one. So is it what young people want to do right now? And this north and south, I would say. But on top of that, we need to be thinking how a just transition framework helps us move farther into the kind of systems that provide energy to people, food to people. These are common public goods. So this is also a framing that we're trying to push for when we are thinking about these things. So I will leave it there and say that in the context of this negotiation that we are following very closely, our push, at least as Climate Action Network, but working very closely with our friends in the trade union movement, with women and gender, with indigenous peoples, with youth, has been that the Just Transition work program that is currently being negotiated needs to, of course, cover the transition away from fossil fuels, but it also needs to be covering the transition to phase in renewable energies. So bringing issues like critical minerals, for example, that we know are difficult, are in tension. Because we have different elements to discuss. And we also need to bring the transition, of food systems, the transition in other industrial sectors. So we have there the possibility to start having this conversation about how international cooperation shifts some of the rules of the game to make dignity, a life in dignity for everyone within planetary boundaries, within climate policy. Over.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. As expected, you made a bigger picture, and the food system is the food system. No? It's not agriculture, it's the food system. And I'm not here to be a co-panelist, but we in the European Economic and Social Committee, we worked out quite a lot in terms of having the holistic view on it. So if we would go deeper and talk about justice in the system, then we have to talk about food speculation, for instance. No, because that's what is for me the point. And I do not want to take your time because I would like to give you here the opportunity to have questions to the panelists, that we do not just talk here. If you have questions, please let me know. Then I bring you in. I saw we have one, because I have also a couple of questions, especially on the question of financing. So this is a huge task to do, as we see that the investment into the agri-food sector is decreasing. It's not increasing, it is decreasing. So how do we want to make the transition if we do not get enough money into the system, which is necessary for that, what Gansem, for instance, explained, and asking what is the access to that, what you have been describing. So we have one question here. Please introduce yourself, but here's the mic. I have the micro here. Come to me. So, but introduce yourself and then have questions to the panelists, please.
Thank you. I'm called Musa Usman Damba. I'm a pastoralist. I'm from Cameroon. My NGO is called Boskuda. We have an observer status with the UNFCCC. We also have an ECOSOP consultative status. My question might be is to the last speaker from Kant. Just to know, is this some kind of historical injustice or mistakes to the agricultural sector in general? Because I'm a pastoralist, we understand how much investment go to, for example, what we call cash crops production. Let's say coffee, cocoa, tea, to the detriment of other sector. That is from the beginning. I mean, when our countries are given independence, they are encouraged to support this kind of agriculture which were export oriented. It's not for our consumption. For example, the coffee, the cocoa, the banana, the plantain. But what we consume is not in their investment agenda. Until today, for example, the pastoralists, the Maasai community in Kenya does not have the same favor like the coffee or the tea producer in Kenya. So how do we transit from there in order to talk about a just transition for agricultural sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. In the meanwhile, I'm asking you if someone else has questions and give. I think it's not only a question to you, Annabella. I mean, I know that agri-food was working quite a lot on this point on the global food system. No? So organizing it in a global way that we conditioned the global south to deliver a kind of luxury food on top and taking the ability from this country to produce the food what they need for the daily nutrition in a way. So how do you see this this question on a historical level? Because that would also mean a transition to go back to that what is necessary in the production. We saw the disruption in the supply chain with a different crisis, for instance, which brought the global south especially into the problematic getting enough food. So the food security issue is an issue. So perhaps you can reflect quickly on that, what was asked for.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I see it from a number of angles. In particular, the pastoral community is under attack in so many of the countries, because when we are talking about large-scale agriculture, mostly it's happening in the pastoral lands, because the pastoral land is called is considered as terra nullius, land which does not belong legally to anyone. So any government can go and take the land. So that's one angle to it. The second is the legacy of slavery and colonialism. I think during colonialism and during slavery, what happened was Africa started to produce crops for the consumption, the market consumption, and also for food consumption for other continents, mostly Europe. And that has created so many other angles also. Land issue is very much critical in Africa now because of the colonial arrangements that is made, and a lot of farmers are out of land. I live in Uganda, and I know that's the case in Uganda also. But this has I was speaking with my sister this morning from Jamaica, and they live also in the similar kinds of environment because most of infrastructure, most of agriculture is done for benefiting the colonial system, but still the problem is there, still existing. She was talking about the financial arrangements, mechanisms, the global financial arrangement that we have now is perpetuating the colonial structure and colonialism. So, yeah, the problem still exists.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I guess probably moving into so what, because I think I absolutely agree with your diagnosis and the fact that the way in which the whole supply chain, global food supply chain is structured is not very different from other parts of the economy. We have a place that is a place of extraction, and then we have other places for processing, and more other places for consumption. We know that that's at the heart, one of the key issues that we need to solve when rethinking our economies and societies to face the climate challenge. The solution cannot be only national. We are not going to manage, a conversation about access to food for everyone, access to energy for everyone, if we are just limiting this to, okay, so this country has to be absolutely self-sufficient on everything. I think there is something on the regional dimension of this conversation that needs to be much deeper. There is a really good report I really encourage to read you from the panel of experts on just transition in Africa. I mean, so it's called Just Transition in Africa, that really connects the dots between this, the energy conversation, food, and what they are calling green industrialization for the continent. And I think there is something there about how we address the issue of access to food, different ways of production, including pastoralists, but probably other ways that are emerging, like including urban food production, the ability of people, to produce as well some of what they need, but also better exchanges in the continents, and clearly in Latin America, clearly in Africa, in Asia, this is also needed, so that probably we build an extra possibility for cooperation that is not only southern countries exporting raw materials and perpetuating extraction. As you were saying, it's happening now. We are in our 200 years or 300 years of colonial and post-colonial rule. Wait, this one is for Peter.
You don't want to come in on this? No? You want to come in quickly?
Yes. For me, what I can say is that we have seen that farmers are producing food, and we are not doing the transformation. Our food is going to the northern part from Africa. For example, cacao, it's go to Africa, to Brazil, and then they process it, and it came back again to our country. Here there is a need of farmers to do the transition, and it costs a lot of money. And we farmers, we need to adapt, learn how to do transition to processing. And there is need to training, and not only for producing and selling. There is also a high cost that came in these sectors that we are moving, like there is many technologies coming, and farmers are trying to fight, to adapt with the climate and the new technology. For example, we are talking about agroecology, but are you sure that it can produce so much food to this population? And the other hand is that, is it the income that we are getting the farmers, is it will reduce, because it reduce the production, even the fertilizer, we cannot use the same fertilizer, so we have to, our soil is not the same soil, so there's a lot of problem inside behind this to go to entrance this to this, and it take time and also the finance also. Thank you.
Thank you, Gansam. Yeah, thank you very much. We go now to the reflection of Herwig Rana. Herwig, you are team leader in climate change and agriculture, so you're quite strongly in the process here. Herwig, you're from the European Commission. Do you think we make progress now? And listening to the panelists here, are we on the right track, or do we have to do more? That we activate now all our colleagues from CAM, from the trade unions, from the World Farmers Association, other NGOs?
Yeah. Thank you. My first thought was, should I make a run for it after listening to all the different topics? Yes, we are making progress. I'm one of the negotiators in the agriculture negotiations. And what we are doing here will certainly not from one day to the next one solve anyone's issues. But what we are achieving is that we act as an aggregator for a lot of action that happens around us. So many of the people that will do their side events here or that work for international organizations, they wouldn't be here if there wouldn't be a negotiation session on agriculture. And because of that, indirectly, we get towards implementation on the ground, which is mainly done nationally. And I agree, we need to agree on how we do it or how we should do it in an international format. But the actual action always happens nationally, regionally, locally. And for that we can only incite people to work together, to share their knowledge, best practices. We have this online portal now from the agriculture negotiations. We intend to use it also so that people can post when they want to do a project on climate action in agriculture, so that others that work for the institutions that might finance it can see it. And we agreed after some heavy discussions on how this portal should function and what could the structure be, and it will be further improved by the Secretariat. Hopefully enough budget there for us to do that. And then we have to use it, and what the EU will do once I'm back, we'll make sure that we upload a good batch of examples so that other people know what it could look like, what they could upload, and incite people to use it. That's just one of the things we do in this Sharm el-Sheikh work program. Where does just transition come in? If you look at the decision from Sharm el-Sheikh, then especially the EU was always pushing for that we consider the needs of smallholder farmers, of women farmers, that we have mentioning of the different dimensions of sustainability. In the EU we have similar problems. They might not be of the same amplitude, but it's similar problems. We also have workers in agriculture that are not insured, or not always. It's also, as you say, quite a free market sometimes, picking tomatoes, similar work. My brother is a farmer. I worked on that farm, especially with cows, and I can tell you cows are not very cooperative when they don't want to move. But at the end of the day, the only thing we can actually achieve here is to make people aware that there is an issue somewhere, and then, as I said before, try to get them around the table and work together, but not at the same table. So, as I said, these institutions will do work in those areas, like the World Bank, like the FAO, the CCAC, and others. And the proof for that is already there. There were loans given to some developing countries that are based on the actions that we said we should do during these negotiations. But it's going to take some time to see all the effects. And what's the alternative? If we wouldn't have this negotiation, then there would be even less happening. So that's about the situation, yeah.
Thank you very much, Herwig. We're almost in the end. Normally, I was supposed to give a 20 minutes conclusion. I will skip this, don't worry. So, but in the end of the day, we heard right now different positions. In the end of the day, it's about financing. So, are we able to mobilize money in order to make the transition or not? That's the point. Whether workers get a decent income means we must have money to pay them. And my conclusion is clear. We did not hear that from the panelists, but in the food system is enough money. It's not that there's not enough money in the food system. It's only wrongly distributed, and that's that simple. That's why we have to put mechanisms in place which are ready and prepared to distribute this money fairly within the food supply chain. For this we need collective agreements, for this we need fair contracts for farmers, and for this we need the international cooperation to make the food system that resilient that it is not jumping from one crisis to the next and we are stressed the system. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Give a warm hand for our panelists and go to the next meeting.